this was part of Providence, but 1650s, this whole area was divided into what they call town lands. So we started getting people to report things, like Westy told me about this place, Bob Ogle told me about Swan Cove. Okay. We started looking. I literally found Levy Neck. That was actually a fun day because I started over at the main old house, walked along the whole edge of the water seeing nothing, got down to that creek, came up the other side, and all of a sudden there were pipe stems and potsherds everywhere. And like, found it. So we spent, I don't know, 20 years messing around here. And one of the first ones we dug at was, well, extensively, was the Burle site. We used to come out here every Friday for a couple of years anyway. And it turns out that the Burle site, like all the others, is in a particular topographic setting. It's over there in that knot of trees. But what you don't realize until you look to the left and see that, like, Phragmites or whatever it is, there used to be a cove coming right up to the house, and it is long since, due to agriculture, silted in. And if you look at Broadneck, and if you look at the others, you see over and over again this same scenario. The Navy Seabees found us another site, by the way, on Greenberry Point by digging a huge hole and bisecting the cellar there, a place called Town Neck. Robert Burle was the surveyor for the Providence settlement, and he kept something called Burle's books. He was in charge of keeping the land records. They weren't communicating with the person who had supposedly given them the land, Lord Baltimore. They didn't want to have anything to do with Lord Baltimore. They kept their own records. And Burle's books didn't survive, so we've got this prehistoric period between like 1649 and 1660, really, when all the land records for Providence disappear. And one of the ironic artifacts over here are these 17th century brass book hinges, which we often joked were Burle's books. Anyway, the other interesting point about this is on Hidden Point. There are two theories about where the Battle of Providence took place. I told you they didn't get along with Lord Baltimore. Well, it eventually broke out into open warfare. And the only land battle of the English Civil Wars fought in the New World was at Providence, called the Battle of the Severn. There's two theories about where it took place. One is Eastport, and the other is Hidden Point. And I'm a firm believer that the other one, Eastport, makes no sense, because the troops left, marched 1.5 miles, meaning they came up to St. Margaret's Road and came back down here and fought in this field, which is another fascinating thing. Like most houses, we found a seal here with someone's name on it, a lead window seal. That the only associated date with that name is 1649. So we assume that Robert Burle built this at the very beginning. He's out of here by 1680 something. Obviously, earth-fast houses only last so long, and that's about the right amount of time, 30 years or 40 years in their coast. They move over to the other part of the field where you see that light brush in the distance there. That's called the Hidden Point site. It starts in about 1680 and goes into the 18th century. So we figure what happens is they're farming over here, but they've got this ruinous house. So they farm around it, and eventually this grove of trees comes up. And eventually that house uses this grove of trees as the cemetery. And I think we've got some of Davy Crockett's relatives in there.
Mine too.
Yeah. But we eventually figured out it was 62 feet long and 18 feet wide, 2 chimneys interior. It was a really cool place. And if you go down to St. Mary's City and look at their reconstructed, which building did they reconstruct? They got a museum in it now.
St. John's.
St. John's. The reconstructed building you see when you stand there is based on the drawings that Willie and Carrie Carson did of the Burle site. They essentially took those and went, oh, okay, boom. So if you want to see what Burle looked like, I mean, we've got reconstructions, but they literally built one in St. Mary's City, and they used, the big deal is, you know, you go to St. Mary City or Jamestown, there's no Dutch material culture. And that was strictly forbidden to trade with the Dutch. The Dutch are Protestants. The people in Providence are Protestants. So these guys were trading with the Dutch big time. The Burle site had a Dutch pan tile roof. It had Dutch yellow bricks and a fire back. It had Dutch tiles around the chimney. And in front of the hearths, it had green and yellow floor tiles. The first time we'd seen those. Now these turn up at other places in Providence. And interestingly, Sherry Marsh's ancestor, who was a Providence inhabitant or citizen, in his records he's importing pan tiles for roofs. So anyway, she had something to do with the pan tiles at this place. So that's the short version of what we're doing here. Let's walk over and look at it.
Cool.